Hello and welcome back. This is episode 23, I believe.
Fuck if I
And
should know.
and
We've lost
today's
track
ep-
at this point.
anyways, today's episode is going to be a little different. We are going to be reading spooky stories today, and by we, I mean mainly Lotus.
Because we
Probably
don't
only
trust
Lotus.
anyone else. At least I don't. For good reason. But that's just me. Alright. Alright. So, I don't have a large selection here, but we're gonna work with what we've got to the best of
Better
my
than
abilities.
nothing. I mean, what we could do is comment on short stories after too, and what we thought of them.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That is definitely
that
fair.
too. Add a little bit.
Alright. So, the first one is. Fuck if I can say this. Xanthnimby? Xanthnimby. I think that's how you say it. People have interesting names. But their entry is titled Jane Doe. There's a quick little short one to get us into this, so let's let's do this now, shall we? You guys ready?
Let's do this.
Alright.
I'm as ready as I can be with the recording today.
Yes, I'm well aware, Skull. I am very well aware.
Yeah.
Alright. Oh, fuck. It was about midnight when I got the call. It wasn't unusual. You were stranded on the side of the road and needed a lift. When I got there, I felt all of the air suck out of my lungs. You had striking blue eyes and waist-length brown hair. You seemed cold, so I wrapped my jacket around your shoulders. I helped you into your car. You didn't say anything, so I kinda just rambled, hoping you'd relax. You didn't say anything when I told you I knew of a place you could stay for the night. You just stared. I wouldn't have felt right leaving you out there in the elements. We were supposed to get a storm, and I knew you wouldn't make it through it unscathed. I helped you downstairs. I assured you I lived upstairs and that no one lived downstairs. I didn't want to scare you by making you think I was some sort of creep. You still said nothing, but you have no sign of protest as I helped you lay down. The basement was chilly, so I even let you keep my jacket. As I turned off the lights, I promised to check on you in the morning. My cheeks flushed as I skipped up the stairs. I wondered to myself if you were mute, but it didn't matter to me. You had me at first glance, and I was sure that we would be lovers. It had been so long since I felt my heart flutter like you made it do. I found myself staring at the ceiling as thoughts of you raced through my mind, and slowly I drifted off to sleep. I was never a morning person, but the sound of my alarm didn't jolt me awake like it normally did. I heard its ringing and almost leapt out of bed with excitement. It was only 6 in the morning, so I didn't want to wake you, but I couldn't help rushing to get ready to see you. Imagine my shock as I turned the TV on in the kitchen as I sat down with my morning bowl of cereal and I saw your face on the early morning news. My heart sank as I raced downstairs. When I flipped on the light, I saw you laying where I had left you. I stood over you and brushed the hair from your face. I lifted one of the long locks up to my lips and kissed it softly. I explained what I saw on the news and told you that we had to leave to keep you safe. No protests escaped your lips as I zipped the body bag shut and wheeled you to the Harris Bay. The one benefit of having worked and lived at a funeral home for so long was knowing how to leave without anyone noticing you. You know, Jane Doe, I don't even know you, but I know we were meant to be. The news sharing a photo of you just meant someone would identify you and take you from me. Now we can travel together as long as we want. I don't know who left you on the side of the road, but I promise we will be together until the police pry me from your cold, dead hands. What is the first one? That is Jane Doe. Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Given my taste in games, this short story is honestly like right up my alley.
What about you, Raptor?
Specifically,
What do you think?
specifically in the horror aspects of it.
Yeah, that was one hell of an interesting story. I
It
definitely
definitely was.
noticed the twist at the end that Skull mentioned.
I was not expecting that. Just that was actually really good. I'm actually gonna. Don't mind me if I favorite that real quick, because I actually really did like that. The favorites, thank darling. All right, that was good. I'm actually really glad that they gave me that. Oh wait, I'm gonna back that up a bit. I am going to make sure I give you that link, Raptor. You're gonna have to put that in the description for later. Gotta make sure we credit the artist now.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask that. I was actually gonna ask that after we recorded. If we should leave credit.
Absolutely,
Always credit the artist,
always,
especially.
always. It's never a question, Raptor. You always credit the artist.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right. Which one do you want next? I've got one. I've got Slizzy's not horror, but I'm still probably gonna read it. And I've got Skull.
First one, so I'll let someone else do it.
What was that?
I said I picked the first one, so somebody else can pick the next.
Raptor, you pick the next one.
Let's do Skulls next.
Damn it, Raptor.
You knew he would do that. All right, here's just a short, so let's go. All right, this is by our lovely little Skull, who's probably high as a kite at this point.
Yep.
Within the Walls is what this is titled. All right, ready, boys?
All right.
All right. Oh dear. All right. Within the walls of a sanatorium long forgotten and left to decay come the cries of those who are trapped, forever left to wander the halls until time's end, searching for a way to escape that will never be found. As you step into the musty main room, you take note of the various items strewn across the area, illuminated by the dim glow of a flashlight's beam. You take a deep breath to ground yourself before you begin to venture farther into the area that had started to buckle from the force of the elements. You feel as though invisible eyes are following you as you venture through the halls that had long since become unsafe for human presence. What once seemed like a normal place for those of dangerously unstable mental conditions very quickly began to show signs of something far more malicious, something far less humane. As you venture, you've failed to note various signs that should have told you to turn around and leave. Hints that have shown that this had not been a normal asylum. As you walked, you heard a second pair of footsteps echoing out of sync with your pace, and you could hear the faint sound of someone begging for help. The sound grew louder as you approached the end of the corridor, where there was some sort of office. You noticed a foul stench that seemed to be wafting from the office. As you approach the door, it creaks open slowly as if the building had been waiting for you. You take another deep breath to steel your nerves as you enter the room. The scene that greets you, however, is chilling. Rusting metal hooks hang from the ceiling attached to equally rusty chains. The shelves were lined with jars of various preserved remains. There was an operating table at the center of the room. The table was stained with what you assumed was blood, You noticed the table had various tools scattered about it and something laying on it. As you approached the table, the whispers that you heard had grown from hushed talking to screams that seemed to beg for you to turn back. You only briefly considered listening to the voices before you arrived at the table. As you stood at the table, you finally realized that what you had been smelling was the smell of decaying flesh. The thing that was attached to the table was fresher than you anticipated, not that you had been hoping to see a rotting corpse to begin with. Shortly after you arrived at the table, you felt something grab you, and everything went dark as you heard the chilling sound of someone saying, I bet they'll love it here, but you've got to fix you up first. And everything went dark.
Credit to 17-year-old me for writing this like 2 years ago.
God damn, Skull.
Yeah, I give Skull credit there. Something dark.
I mean, I've wrote darker. I just couldn't find those.
What do you think, Raptor?
Holy hell. You have some dark stuff.
Oh, you think that's dark? I don't know, Skull. Have you seen Darker?
I've read and written darker.
Yeah, I was about to say.
There are horror movies that get darker.
Look at Coraline.
Documentaries, even.
Alright, since I'm the one reading, I leave the choices to you two. Skull, what's the next one? I've got two, and then we've got Solizzi's.
Let's do one of yours.
Alright. Alright, I have no names for these, just call this Horror Story 1.
Okay.
Look, I'm too tired to think of names for stuff like this. I just know that. Alright. Alright. This is the part I was nervous about. Alright. Alright. Okay. Oh my man, I'm not used to sharing my work like this. Oh. Darkness surrounds you. There is nothing but silence, save for a drip, drip, drip. You count it in tune with each second that passes. Each second becomes a minute, each minute an hour. By the time the hours become days, you've lost count and start again. Time means nothing in this void as you wait for whatever may come. Your body grows numb to the cold and the dark. The chains that weigh heavily on your wrists begin to lighten, as if they were never there in the first place. But you know better. As you move, you hear the little rattle of the rusty chains. The only thing to interrupt the drip, drip, drip. In this darkness, there is a noise that comes. It is a crash and a bang. You don't look up, but you feel something move you. It grabs both your arms and hoists you up, drags you away. You begin to look up as the darkness fades away, replaced with this blinding white light. You look around, trying to get your sense of direction, where you are, but nothing makes sense. All you see is white everywhere. But it was better than darkness, right? You're dragged away for not what feels like a long time. You enter a new room by a new crash sound. You're tossed onto a table. You feel something strap against your body, but you're not sure what it was. A blinding sun is right above your eyes, blinding you. You try to blink it away, but you can't. It just stays there. The shadow moves over, blocking the sun. You try to squint and make out something, but all you see is the shadow. You watch as there's a glint in a mysterious hand. You feel a prick on your arm, and your senses jolt awake as you feel cold metal pushed down into your arm and dragged along. You let out a scream and struggle, but something holds you down at your arms and your legs. The pain continues as it moves from your arm to your legs, then to your chest. You smell copper as it assaults your senses and the warm blood as it drains from your body. All you can do is scream as the doctor works away. Eternity seems to pass before the pain lessens and goes away. You breathe a sigh of relief knowing that it's over, until you smell the scent of burning flesh. You look up in horror as you try to see what's going on, but you're blinded by the light and the shadow. Your senses begin to dull again, and you return to the darkness. There you go, guys.
Holy shit.
It wasn't that dark.
So what was that at the end with, like, burning flesh? Like, were they about to eat him?
I don't know. You tell me.
That sounds like cannibalism shit right there.
You'll never know. You have to use your imagination then, Raptor, won't you? Skull?
What?
God damn
Fucks.
it.
Skull, were you even paying attention?
Isn't interesting. I was for the first half, and then I got distracted.
For fuck's sake, Skull.
I'm sorry.
I feel nothing but disappointment in you.
It was either this or pain.
Ah, for fuck's sake.
Ugh.
At least, Raptor, I'll give you credit. You were paying attention. Shame, Skull. Alright, Raptor. I have one other one, and then I have Solizzi's.
Yeah, let's do your other one first.
Alright. Fair enough. Oh,
Is it torture Lotus? Is it words? Is it torture Lotus time?
Yes, it's Torture Lotus time.
Good. Suffer.
We've already been doing this, Skull. You should have said this sooner. Maybe you need to lay off.
I didn't think to say it sooner.
Oh my gosh. I feel nothing but disappointment in you.
Good. Be disappointed.
Don't worry, I already am.
The least I can do.
At least. Alright, fair enough. Alright, again, this one does not have a title. Can't be bothered to really come up with that kind of stuff for these one-off things. Again, these are all more or less improv, so
Spooky Story 2.
yeah, Spooky Story 2. Alright. Oh. Fuck's sake, okay. Don't mind me, I'm just having a moment. Just collecting myself. I knew I'd be doing this too, and I'm still not ready.
You got this. I have faith in you.
I'm glad someone does, because I certainly don't.
Besides, you got through the
You'll
other
be
stories.
fine.
Skull, does your opinion really mean much when you're probably higher than the clouds?
It matters. To some degree, it matters.
There's
Space
something very
shuttles are in space. You're way the
Space
fuck above those. High as fuck.
That bad. I'm not that bad. It could be way worse.
That's true. He could be. He could have had more. So.
Sorry, you can read your story?
Yes, I'm just stalling. So bite me.
Well, stop bullying me and get fucking reading.
And why else do you think I was saying I was stalling? For fuck's sake. Alright. You sit in the middle of your room, rocking back and forth in a quaint little living room. A fire roars in the fireplace, keeping you nice and warm and cozy. You pause and look out the window as you see the branches fluttering in the wind. You hear the occasional tap, tap, tap coming in from the wind. There's a storm coming in. That much you knew. You took a breath and relaxed. It was just a storm. Nothing new, nothing special. You pull out a book and start to read. And as you do, the warmth that you felt from the fireplace begins to dwindle. You tilt your head in confusion as you look up, and the fire is still aglow, but there's no heat coming from it. You get up and toss another log in, hoping that should hopefully solve the problem. But as you turn and you look towards the window, you see frost slowly spreading and covering the window. You approach it and look out, seeing if there might be something out there. And as you look, you see a face form in the frost. You take a few deep breaths and take a step back. It was nothing, you told yourself. It was just a trick of the mind. The storm has you all scared. There's nothing out there. You are fine. But as you return to your chair, you see that the flowers in the vase begin to wilt and die. Your heart begins to beat faster as a chill sweeps across the room and embraces you in an unwelcome hug. The chill moves across the room, snuffing out the fire at long last. You search the darkness, looking, seeing if something is there. This couldn't have been just a normal storm, was it? You go and look for the kitchen, try to find the candles to light your way. But from the darkness, a cold hand reaches out and wraps around your neck. You don't scream, but you freeze, stuck in place, while another hand reaches up. Next thing you feel, cold fangs sink deep into your neck, and you feel the life drain from your very body. Here you go.
Elsa, if she were a vampire.
Oh my god.
Is that you, Elsa, if she were a vampire?
Vampires are often associated with cold, Raptor.
It sounded like sort of a D&D-esque sort of narration.
Well, what else do you expect? I'm a DM.
Yeah. Then why were you so nervous earlier?
Because I'm still nervous regardless.
You're doing
Don't do
so
these.
good, though.
Yeah, I don't read stories and not used to this kind of stuff. Usually it's other people doing the reading, so. Alright. This one for Solizzi is more as, well, I guess a courtesy. He was kind enough to offer it, even though it wasn't exactly horror, so I'm gonna read it still. But while I do that, I need to get the pronunciations up because I am ass at this kind of thing, and these are fantasy names, so fuck me. All right, all right. You guys ready?
Alright, let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
It is. How do I say this? Ignatus.
Yeah.
Ignitus. Oh, the pronunciation's right there. All right. Luflint. He also said he wasn't really necessarily worried if I pronounce things wrong because
Languages.
yeah. Huh? Mhm. Oh yeah. So yeah. All right. Here we go. Just a traveler. Ignatius and Flint crouched at the edge of the woods surrounding the town of Abergrave. The tall, dark trees stared down at him under the bright sun. Before him was a small pond dancing under the light at the wood's edge. He shook off his boots and rolled up his beige trousers. He shrugged his cloak off and sat it beside the bank of the pond. The small patch of water was warm to the touch. Floating on the surface were lily pads and two nymphea blooms. The white flowers swayed in the breeze as Ignatius waded through the waters towards them. He gently plucked both lotus flowers, carrying them on to the grass. Rare as they were, it reminded him of his mother, his reason for coming so far. Coughing and whimpering, it echoed across the small hut. Ignatius's mother and sister were shades paler than they should have been. The two were curled up together on a cot. Beads of sweat ran down his mother's face. She looked up at Ignatius as he threw his raven feather cloak around his shoulders. Eva will be here soon to watch you, Ma, Ignatius said as he tied his wavy dark hair back. He turned to her, worried etched in his features. She told me of the herbs she needs, a rare flower, and how to mix them. His mother stood unsteady and stepped towards him, grasping his arm. Igni, my boy, she coughed. You don't have to go. Her grip tightened. Ignatius gently rubbed her hand as he pulled his arm away. I love you, Ma. And Curie, I'm going to do my best to help you. He gave his mother a soft smile as tears rolled down her cheeks. Just wait for me. Birds chirped overhead as Ignatius delicately packed the white blooms away into a jar, placing it in his satchel. He stood and stared up at the bright blue prime sky. It may have taken him 2 towns over, but he found the white lotus he needed. He turned and walked back through the town. He had no intention to stay away from his family. As he went back, though almost out of town with the palisade in sight, he noticed a commotion around one hut in particular and a little girl sobbing inside. Ignatius stopped. He knew he didn't have time for this, but he stopped anyway. As he made his way over, he heard the townsfolk. She's sweating buckets! Her face is so hot! Someone go get the apothecary! The little girl continued to cry. Tears and snot covered her round face. Mommy, she whimpered. Excuse me, Ignatius stepped into the crowd. The crowd turned to stare at the newcomer. Who are you? A burly man asked. Ignatius reached into his satchel. I'm not an apothecary, yet. I've been studying under one for a couple of years, but I think I can make something that will help. As he spoke, he cursed himself inside his head. He pulled out the jar of white blooms. I just need a space to make some medicine. Who are you? How can we trust you? A meek-looking woman asked. The raven-haired man shook his head. My name is Ignatius Luflint, and you don't have to trust me, just the herbs I have. He looked around at it, the still distrustful faces. At least let me look at her and see what condition she's in. The meek woman nodded and silently pulled Ignatius through the crowd into the hut. The ill woman was laying on a cot, coughing into a rag. Belongings strewn round her, a mug of cold tea beside her, and a stack of dirty plates on a nearby table. The old food remained on them nearly untouched. Her pallid face dripped with sweat, and immediately Ignatius saw his mother in her. He bit back his hesitation and approached her. "I'm an apothecary in training. May I?" He held out his hand. With a small nod and a hoarse grunt, she leaned towards him. Ignatius rested his hands on her forehead, feeling her burning fever. He looked down at her quivering hands. "Have you been able to eat?" he asked. She shook her head no and pulled away from him. He stared down at the lotus in his satchel, the lotus he searched so long to find, the lotus meant for his own family. "I'll be back soon," he smiled at the ill woman. "Just rest." The meek woman led him out of the hut. Ignatius looked at the crowd. "I know what medicine I have to make for her." "Come on, then." The burly man grabbed Ignatius's arm and led him away from the crowd to a different hut. The two walked inside and the man spoke again. This is my home. You can work here." He led Ignatius to a table and cleared his personal belongings off. "Thank you." Ignatius smiled and placed his herbs onto the table. Coriander, wormwood, mint, and of course, the lotus. Reaching into his satchel, he pulled out his mortar and pestle and a flask of water. With the man watching his every move, he crushed the flower and mixed them with the other medicinal herbs, dripping some water in and mixing until it made a soft green paste. Ignatius poured the mixture into an empty jar. He cupped his hands around it and whispered, "May you bring her to health quickly." And a white glow grew around the medicine as he closed his eyes and focused. After a minute, the glow faded. Ignatius handed the jar to the man. "Give her a few spoonfuls of this. Watch her, and repeat in a few hours. I was told this should help lower her fever in about a day. Make sure she eats something with the medicine." The man eyed him skeptically. "I still don't trust a stranger, but we don't have anything else we can try." He took the jar and walked back to the woman's hut. The girl was still outside, crying, but the crowd had mostly died down. Ignatius stayed outside while the man rushed past the girl and into the hut. Ignatius sighed and sat down beside the crying girl. "Everyone's doing their best to help your mommy," he smiled at her. "She'll be on her feet soon." The girl roughly wiped her tears away. "Who are you? How do you know?" "Just a traveler," Ignatius shrugged. "And call it a hunch, I suppose. But you should go see her." He motioned his hand to the hut. She finished drying her face and nodded. The girl gave Ignatius one more curious glance before walking back inside her home. Ignatius stood, taking in a deep breath. He began to step away from the hut as he heard the voice of the burly man call out to him. "Hey!" The man jogged out to Ignatius, holding a hastily tied bag towards him. "It's not much, but I can't offer you quid. But here's some dried meat." The man looked at Ignatius' form up and down and chuckled. "You could probably use it." Ignatius hesitantly took the bag and smiled. "Thank you. I'm sure it'll come in handy." He and the burly man shook hands before parting ways again. Ignatius sighed and put the dried meat into his satchel, not sure what he'd use it for, as he avoided eating meat. He made his way back out of town to the edge of the woods. For hours he searched, and he couldn't find another pond, no more white blooms. He stared into the darkness beyond the trees and bit back his fear. If there was one more place they'd grow, it was in there. Behind all dangers that would await him, Ignatius walked into the woods, under the compline sky, the silver moon gleaming down on him. The shadows of the trees shrouded him as he knelt on the ground and fumbled, trying to light his lantern. The flint fell from his quivering fingers as he tried to strike the steel. He felt around the grass for it as sweat rolled down his face. Relieved, he found it and grabbed it and struck the steel again, sending embers into the tinderbox. Blowing on the charred cloth, he managed to grow a small flame. Using a splint, he carried it over to the lantern, lighting it. Once he put the embers out and packed his tinderbox away, he stood and looked around. Dark shapes resembling animals leaped from tree trunks to bushes. Barely visible leaves and branches rustled. The light of Ignatius's lantern flickered as he stepped slowly through the forest. There were indistinct growls and caws. Twigs snapped even when Ignatius wasn't moving his feet. Off in the distance, he saw a break in the trees and a soft blue light. He smiled, relieved, and quickened his pace towards it. Large black shadows surrounded him the further he walked, the growling getting closer and louder. Ignatius broke into a run, his lantern swung vigorously, the flame dancing, trying to stay lit. A face from the dark trees made itself visible, a large gray wolf, snarling and burying its fangs as it blocked off Ignatius's path. He gasped and his knees buckled. Falling to the grass, his lantern clattered beside him, the flame extinguished. Circling around him, more wolves approached from the darkness. He couldn't count them. He could hardly see them. His hands trembled as he brought his knees to his chest. The largest wolf was nearly at arm's length away. Ignatius knew this was strange. Wolves didn't normally behave this way. Grasping for something, anything, an idea came to him. He slowly reached out of his satchel and pulled out the bag of dried meat. The large wolf paused, sniffing. Ignatius held the bag out in front of him. The wolf's growl softened as it approached, nudging the bag with its snout. This close, Ignatius could see how thin it was, much more so than a wolf should be. It clamped its teeth down on the bag and pulled it away, jogging back to the darkness. The other wolves followed. Trembling, Ignatius grabbed for his snuffed-out lantern. He gripped the handle and stood with shaky knees. He felt something nudge his back. Yelping, he turned around to see a young wolf sniffing and nuzzling him. Ignatius took a deep breath and held out his hand. The wolf slowly approached, then rubbed its hand against Ignatius's palm. He sighed, relieved. A howl from the distance stole the young wolf's attention, and it ran off into the shadows. The light, not so far off, called out to Ignatius once more. He dusted himself off and collected his courage, advancing closer. He pushed through the bushes, trying not to trip on rocks or twigs he could no longer see. In the lit clearing beyond the large bushes and trees, there was a pond. Larger than the one at the forest edge, this one shimmered in the moonlight, the water reflecting it across all nearby plant life. On the surface of black and azure ripples sat dozens of white lotus blooms. Ignatius gasped and approached the water. He quickly shook off his boots and rolled up his trousers. Stepping into the warm, illuminated water, he collected 4 lotus flowers and carried them out. Delicately, he placed them in jars, separating them from the lily pads, and placed the lily pads back into the water surface. Dressing himself quickly, he picked up his belongings, relit his lantern, and exited back the way he came. As the light of his lantern shone on the undergrowth, he couldn't remember which path led to his exit. He bit his lips, his hands trembled as he slowly stepped forward, taking his best guess. The darkness continued to dance around him, the light of the moon and stars blocked off by the trees. Ignatius tensed up at every skitter, every rustle of leaves. He glanced around, his lantern getting dimmer the longer he walked in circles. A caw from one side, a growl from another. Ignatius noticed the light fading around him. He whimpered softly, his family becoming quickly out of reach. He broke into a run, having no idea where he was headed. With his light almost out, he crashed into a tall, black tree. His lantern crashed and shattered against it, the bark leaving cuts on his hands. With his body quaking, he let the broken tool fall and wrapped his arms around the tree, sliding down to his knees. Whether it was his panic or the blackness of the night, his eyes couldn't adjust. He had no sense of where he was or what direction would lead him out. Ignatius closed his eyes tight, gripping the tree, trying to breathe. His shaggy, shallow breaths came to a halt when he felt something soft nudge his back. He dug his nails into the bark, feeling cuts form, and he slowly turned his face to see the familiar silhouette of a young wolf. The wolf whimpered and nudged him again. Ignatius released the tree, still shaking, and faced his body towards the young wolf, who began to sniff and lick the cuts on his hands and fingers. Ignatius's breathing slowed to normal, and after a few minutes, he reached for his broken lantern and stood. The wolf stepped beside him, letting Ignatius rest his hand on his head. It looked up at him, eyes shimmering, and barked. Beginning to lead, Ignatius kept his hand rested on the wolf and followed the direction it took him. He wasn't sure if it was him having a guide or the soft silver fur entwined with his fingers, but he felt calm. He felt safe. As the two walked further, moonlight broke through the trees, silver ribbons in the blackness. The wolf stepped back and nudged Ignatius towards the edge of the woods. Ignatius turned to the young wolf. "Thank you," he whispered. The wolf barked softly, then turned and loped away. Ignatius took a deep breath, a smile on his weary face, and stepped out of the woods. He looked down at the pond he had entered them by, seeing his tangled hair and his heavy bags under his eyes. Quickly he thrust his hand into his satchel, sighing in relief to find all the jars intact. His mother and sister needed them. He could rest later. Ignatius burst through the door of his home to find Aoife tending to his mother and sister, coaxing them by candlelight to drink some tea, both of whom looked paler and thinner than when Ignatius had left. All tired eyes turned to him. "Igni," his mother whispered, her voice barely audible. He nodded, his sight blurry and his knees weak. He hadn't rested or slept. He came home as fast as his legs could carry him. Aoife stood, her long copper curls draping down her shoulders. "Here, here." She led Ignatius to a chair and helped him sit, her brown eyes tracing his exhausted features. Wordlessly, he held up his satchel for her, and she looked inside. Eva gasped with joy as she pulled out the lotus blooms. Wasting no time, she immediately cleared some space and went about preparing the medicine. Finishing up, Aoife rushed over to Ignatius's, the mother and sister, spooning the bitter medicine into their mouths. The two grimaced but kept it down. Aoife immediately handed them a bowl of stew each and encouraged them to eat slowly. The aroma of spiced mutton and vegetables overtook the room. As the two ate, Aoife turned her attention back to Ignatius, who was slumped over, eyes closing. Aoife sighed and grabbed his shoulders, gently helping him up and walking him to an empty cot. Ignatius collapsed onto it, still wearing his raven feather cloak, his eyes unable to stay open. The bright sun shone down on Ignatius as he stood at the edge of his hometown, Amendello. Aoife, along with his mother and sister, were beside him. His mother placed a hand on his shoulders. "Igni, don't stay away too long." Igni cupped her hand and smiled. "I'll come back and visit, Ma. Don't worry." Curie, his sister, handed him a bag of dried fruit. "Where will you go this time?" She was the spinning image of him, just shorter. Thick dark hair, dark eyes, dusty tan and all. "Farther, I think," Ignatius replied. "Wherever I find someone that needs help. A lot of towns don't have apothecaries, and most people don't have the quid to travel when they fall ill." Finally, Aoife, his mentor, stepped up to him. "Then, with you, they'll be in good hands." She straightened his cloak. "Take good care of this. I don't make these for just anyone." "Thank you, Aoife, Ma, Curie." Ignatius grinned. He stepped back, waving at them. They waved back. He then turned and looked off in the distance where his future lay. The path was daunting, but Ignatius knew that far beyond his home there were other mothers and daughters, more burly men, more crying girls, and he would do whatever it took to help them. There you go. That is Ignatius Flint.
That was rather interesting.
Dang.
Though it wasn't like a horror story, it did have a little bit of like a spooky aspect with like The part with like the wolf and everything.
Wolf, the forest, and all that
The
kind of
wolf
stuff.
forest, yeah.
It's almost kind of typical when it comes to like kind of certain horror things, like to involve wolves, being saved from wolves, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I guess it did fit at least a little bit. The
Yeah,
what we're
it's not
doing.
it's not horror as a whole, but like you know, ooh,
Yep, this is still titled Spooky Stories, so it counts.
yeah, it still counts. What'd you think, Skull?
It was really good.
Well, that is Solizzi. He is in, I want to say our main server, but I could be wrong. I don't keep track of who's actually in there, who's not.
He might be in our podcast Discord. I do know he's in your Creative Corner server.
Oh, he is. Oh, wait, I think he is, right? Yeah, he is. Of course he is. He posts in there. Don't mind me. I'm not running on sleep. But yeah, no, Skull, if you're ever interested, I can always link you his stuff on Wattpad. Well, you should be able to find him just fine on Wattpad,
Ooh.
actually. Yes. You might like his Value of a Heartbeat series. I think it's really good.
Oh boy. I'll have to
Yeah,
check it
but
out sometime.
the one I read from was his, I believe it's a short collection, essentially, where he's just like doing little stuff for his characters. It's, I think, the complete guide to Morgaanis. I think so. Hold up here. I need to see because I have it. Yeah, the complete guide to Morgaanis. It's basically, just a collection of short stories about side characters and things like that. And that was one of the side characters.
Ooh.
Yes. Again, I think you'll really like his content. He's got some good writing there.
Curiosity has definitely been piqued.
Mm-hmm. So, what do we think of that? Of the stories, gentlemen?
Yeah, I
Oh,
liked
they were
them.
good.
They were good.
Any favorites from you guys?
Oh, it's hard to pick a favorite.
Yeah,
Okay, like if you had to judge each of them.
I mean, both of yours were pretty good. I really like the mystery of the one with like that doctor and the burning flesh and all that.
Just because you don't know how it really, like, what's the definite ending? It's just
Yeah, I
all
really
up in
like
the
that.
air.
It just leaves me wondering.
That's that can be the mark of a good story. If that's the
Exactly.
intention, at least, if that's the intention. What about the other ones, Raptor?
Hmm. I don't know. This is tough decisions.
I was saying, like, what'd you think of them overall?
Overall, they were really good. I liked them. They were all good.
And Skull?
What?
Oh, fucking gosh. Pay attention!
I'm trying.
Uh-huh.
Mm,
I am.
Alright. So, what did you think
Um,
overall?
Overall, I've got to say Jane Doe was probably the best in terms of like plot twist at the end, which is why I sent the link after. Um, I definitely enjoyed the sort of open-ended mystery, and for Solizzi's, it really kept my attention. It was invested in the whole thing.
Alright, anything else? Any closing words from you guys?
not me.
Words.
That's fair.
Alright, so we're ready to wrap this up?
I'd say so. If you guys like it, we might do this again with different types of stories.
Alright. And with that being said, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. have a good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever the case is for you, and we will. Fuck. We will. We will see you.
English.
Yeah. English, I don't speak it. We will see you guys next time.